It's my second time in Ukraine. I am part of a Tempus project. We have been to Kiev and to Portugal and to some other places. But my first time in Kharkiv, so thank you for welcoming me to your beautiful city. My name is Lundberg, and I think, if I understood Ukrainian fairly enough, I think you said I'm from Sweden. And I am, but I also feel very home in Mexico. I will have some examples here. I'm married to a Mexican. I've been living in Mexico for 4 or 5 years. And I've been training, hopefully your Mexican equivalents, young IT entrepreneurs that comes with their business ID. They attend a master, in my case, and we use the whole master to prepare them for their own venture. So in the beginning, we do several business modeling courses and other stuff in the early part of the master. And then we proceed during the master, and many of them are ready to fly when they leave the master. But there are many formats and ways to try to boost innovation into entrepreneurial ventures. So I will say a few words about that in my minutes here. I have some other affiliations also. I work as much as I can nowadays in the European context. So I gain as much experience from as many countries as possible, because I think context matters. Ukraine is not Sweden, Sweden is not Mexico, Mexico is not US. I think the local differences and the regional differences is very important. Each country and each region in a country has its flavor, its specifics. So I will spend some time also on context to try to say something about, yes, the generics, but also something more specific in relation to Ukraine. That's the idea. Let's see if the machinery works. It does. It's amazing. Some background first. There is a big talk about emerging economies in the world right now. The first generation, maybe you heard about it, it's called BRIC. It stands for 4 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. That took off in the early zeros, 2000 something, 1990 something. It was the first generation of the emerging economies. Previously the discussion was about developed and developing countries, and that kind of looking at it is abandoned because the geopolitical situation is changing. The second wave we see now is emerging. They call it MIST. Goldman Sachs, one of the big investment banks in the world, wrote a report that already is out there. And they claim for various reasons that the 4 countries of Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea and Turkey are the new, if not superpowers, at least the emerging economic powers that will starting to play a crucial matter on both the economic and geopolitical scene. Then we can speculate about who will come next, and I would definitely start to speculate through my experience here in Ukraine. Well, what's Ukraine's chances of being part of any third generation of emerging economies that takes off, that not only takes off domestically but also does it in the international scene? The IT industry there has always, in all countries, a special role, because it's not just any industry, it's like a meta-industry. It's an industry that affects all other industries. Whatever happens in the IT industry, in some way or the other, affects most or all other industries. So it's a kind of decisive, it has the same role as the automotive industry had in the old days, a kind of defining industry. So whatever decisions you take, and all IT students in Ukraine, for instance, I've learned in the Tempus project that I'm a member of that at this moment it's like 90% outsourcing based. And the problem with that is how to level up in the value chain. How to go from being the outsourcer, the deliverer of value to somebody else, but then instead go from made in Ukraine to created in Ukraine. That is, the value is both created and stays here, and the profit is reaped here in Ukraine. and not delivered to some foreign direct investment company. Many countries have struggled with that equation. They start off as an outsourcing country because of various competitive advantages. They do that for a generation or two, but then it is about to level it up. And here you have, I would say, both your key strength and the key paradoxical problem, because you're extremely strong in innovation. What I've learned in the Tempus project is that your technical universities, your natural sciences, mathematical, all this engineering, technical background is extremely strong. So you're extraordinarily strong in the world in innovation, and particularly technological innovation. But this can also be a problem. You can overemphasize innovation. There is more to it to make it on the entrepreneurial scene. There is something happening before innovation, and there is something happening after, and that is what I will focus my minutes on here. I would also say that there are work to be done if I compare to an emerging economy like Mexico in mindset, attitude, etc. Identity matters. In Mexico case, for instance, it came a new OECD report. It's the hardest working country in the world. They work 2,300 something hours per year, which is several hundred years more than the second nation. And it breaks with all stereotypes about Mexico as the country of mañana, tequila, and yagre fiesta, right? They work extremely hard. It's an enormous raw entrepreneurial spirit, and I see something resembling in many countries, Ukraine being one of them. But then it's a matter about how to sort of transform that spirit into more systematic and more subtle entrepreneurial processes. And that journey is still to be done. And there is a job to be done at the macro level and on an individual level with mindset, identity, and behavior. So I would say that the first courses you have in entrepreneurship should deal with the software in the metaphorical sense. Communicative skills, the way you see life, the way you go about in life, the way you relate to other people. Then you can start dealing with the hardware, the innovation, the technological stuff that you are developing, etc., etc. Because these aspects are more fundamental, I would say, than the others. I will come back to this. It's also a distinction between problem orientation and opportunity orientation. Most countries in the world have oceans of domestic problems. Mexico has all problems under the sun. Ukraine, I don't know, but you have your fair share, I would guess. It's about what you choose to focus on. If there is a big portion of problems in the world, you can say, no, it's no idea, no, it's not possible, no, this is how it works here, no. Or you can choose to accept the fact that there is a lot of problems, but you take another stand. Mexico has in its DNA sort of that kind of way of thinking. And ask yourself where you are in that respect, because a no-say culture has problems of entering the entrepreneurial sort of societal path. So it's very important. Also, the last point there, the distinction between entrepreneurship and innovation. As I said, one key strength, innovation, could paradoxically be one weakness. You could over-focus innovation and think that's all to it. And it's not. It's very fundamental to realize the processes before and after. So let me focus on them. We can come back to this. There is also a very clear distinction on how you would like to run your companies. If you want what we call traditional management, then you have a long list here to the left, which we will skip because I see the screen is too small. So you who sit in the back, you will definitely not see it. But just to pass it on, that you need to make up your mind by two ideal types: entrepreneurial management, running your ventures in that style, or the old school, more hierarchical, linear forms of management. Very few companies are in either extremes over time. Most companies are a hybrid and a mix of this, but you need to find your style. And if you want to run it entrepreneurial, you need a fair portion of the right column, and then you need to add whatever you think is good and valid in the left column. Okay, the headline for my presentation is the entrepreneurial process. And my first impression when working in Ukraine and with Ukraine, as I said, is very strong in innovation, but also an over-focus on innovation, in particular technological innovation. That is your entrance ticket to anything, but it doesn't do the work. So I will now describe a couple of key challenges in all the different phases of the entrepreneurial process. The innovation process is only one of three. I said there is something happening before and there is something happening after. And I call this the entrepreneurial process. If we focus on the second part there, the entrepreneurial process over time, you will, if you take the role all by yourself, go through three phases. In the early days, you are the creator of something. You have an idea. It is sketchy, it is mostly in your head or in your drawings or in your computers, but it doesn't exist in real form. So you are creating something, it's in the process of becoming. In the next stage, you are the innovator. You take an idea to its first material form. You make one thing out of something. A prototype is the emblematic example. The entrepreneurial phase is to take one thing that functions, a prototype that is proven to function, into some kind of massifying process. You bring it to the market. The market can be local, regional, or the world. But you massify it. You make it from one to many. If you do not yourself, as an individual, hold all these talents and skills, most people don't. We have super entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and others that have all these capacities, but most of us doesn't. Then you need to team up. You need to compensate for your weaknesses. So if you, for instance, are strong, most of you, I would guess, given your educational background, are very strong in innovation and technological innovation. That's where you have your core in whatever your speciality are. And most of you, most probably, will find a kind of second talent in either of the early phase, the creative phase. You are idea generators. You see the world very creatively, and you can sort of pitch ideas and come up with stuff. But maybe having problem in the third phase, the let's proceed to action. All these great ideas that you have pitched and shared with your friends. Well, do you realize any of them? Does something happen with them? Some have all three, but most not. So find what you are good at and then team up. So you create entrepreneurial teams in order to get hold of this process. Because the core message here, the entrepreneurial process is not only about one or two of these things. You need to be skilled as a team, or as in exceptions, as an individual, in all of these three parts of the processes. Otherwise, it will not take off. So let me discuss some of the key challenges in this. We can skip that. If we take the first phase, the creative phase, it's about doing your unique reading of the world. Now the pictures are a little bit too small, but maybe the first half will see actually a prize-rewarded book vandalism. It's a teacher's book in history. It's for secondary level, I think, and it is circulated on Facebook. And the way early human history was depicted was in a certain gestures. You can see it there if you sit close enough. This student, maybe 10 years or 11 years, read in something into that picture and filled in the gaps in his or her world. And he saw one of the humans playing guitar and another one playing battery drums and etc., etc., and named it Neanderthalica after Metallica, the heavy metal group. Yes, it's a book vandalism, but it's also an extraordinary example of the headline here, do your unique reading of the world. You have to, in some way or the other, stand out and differentiate. Because there are many IT students in the world, not only in Ukraine, there are many enough in Ukraine. And the first challenge is to at all come up with something that differentiates from anything else. That is tough enough. But to start with, to really fight for, this is me, this is how I see the world, this is what I would like to do in the world. So fight for that and defend that, your right to provide your unique reading of the world. With this as an example. And don't be afraid to communicate it, even if this is on the edge. Yes, you should not destroy books. But if to do it anyway, you could do it creatively, right? What is the key challenge in more general terms in this phase? Well, an entrepreneurial process in the creative phase, it can take some time. You can be in the creative phase for 6 months, you can be there for 1 year, before the venture actually exists. It doesn't exist. There is no company created yet, so the company only exists in your head and in your dialogue with others until you take certain decisions, and then it takes material form. So the key challenge is to communicate your ideas and the venture that still yet not exists. But then people should sign up around you. They should like your idea and dedicate themselves to you. So this is a key challenge, to communicate and attract something that doesn't exist yet. So what is the approach to solve that? Well, there is a branch in entrepreneurship, in the nation phase, this is called, where entrepreneurship is immaterial. The company doesn't exist yet, there is no prototype yet, the stuff that you are selling doesn't exist yet. It is in sketches, in CAD/CAM, in computers, in your head and in talks. That's the form it has at this moment. That means that in the creative phase you have to be able to practice communicative entrepreneurship. You have to be both strategic communicators, you have to be surprising communicators, you have to capture an audience without having them go to sleep in half an hour. I still yet see no sleepers here, so maybe I am still on the scene here, but you can't lose your audience. You have to win the audience and you have to keep them. So the early days of any entrepreneurial venture is to a large extent about human relations and communication, because your venture and your prototype does not yet exist. Still, you will try to convince people to get on the train, to help you, to get attracted to your idea, etc. This is the first and most difficult challenge in the creative phase. To tell to the world that you have something that you want to do, but it still doesn't have material form. It's much easier in the second phase, the innovation phase, because then you have the prototype. But you have to start this process before. And to hang on to the first example here, we have also here a Mexican car shop that once again use the case of Metallica, but he calls it Mechanica. But for you who is into the typographic of Metallica, you recognize, anybody can see that, okay, that's the Metallica logo, right? So with creativity in there, it can send a strong communicative message that, yeah, it's differentiated. If you go to these parts of Mexico City, these streets, there maybe are hundreds of workshops. Which one do you choose? Out of 100, you have to stick out in some way. So the key message here is, find your communicative style. Make yourself, why should people listen to you when they listen to so many other people? You have to find some little easy tricks, something that makes you stick out and remain in the heads and attention of other people. It doesn't need to be rocket science. It can be everything from cheap tricks to whatever. This is a cheap trick. Metallica, Mechanica. But it works, right? That's it. It works. Find your tricks. Find your way into people's minds and how you stay there. That's the key first challenge in the creative phase. To get into people's minds and to stay there. Because once you have them on the hook, if you're a fisherman, You need to sort of bait and you need to do all the tricks, and then you have them there, right? Then it starts for real. And when does it start for real? Well, there is also a second part before the innovation phase, that when you have found your unique voice, it is not as unique as you hope it is. Now the screen is too small, but it is supposed to show the same image in 15 versions, dependent on what art form. So it reads, if I see myself. It starts with realism, it continues with impressionism, and it goes on with Dadaism, and it goes on like that. So what this metaphorically illustrates is what we think is so unique. And in my experience in the Mexican IT entrepreneurs, there is a strong overbelief in the uniqueness of any technological innovation. You should of course at one hand believe in what you are doing, but on the other hand be very, very humble and look around in the world, especially outside your immediate local context. And you will see that many are thinking about the same or similar things that you are thinking about. So this picture here is to send you a word of warning. Do at one hand, create your unique line of thinking and really believe in it, work on that. But on the other hand, practice real, genuine humbleness and take a look around in the world. Who is doing the same or similar things. So this is same picture in 15 different versions. The key challenge here is, of these 15, who wins the crowd? Is it Dadaism? Is it Impressionism? Is it Dadaism or Dadaism? Is it your unique take on the world, or is it somebody else's? The entrepreneurship history learns us a couple of things, and one is that not very often the best idea wins. Very often it's the best communicator that wins. The world isn't fair. It is not rational in that sense. That just if you happen to have the best idea, that you will make it to the end scene. There is no automas in that. Very often it's the second best or third best, but they are better on other stuff. Communication, marketing, selling, any other soft skill. So that is what, also for instance, another core lesson is that the first mover very often reap off the best profits. It's the copycats that comes after. That doesn't need to pay so much for their mistakes. A first mover, taking something to the scene for the first time, often needs to do more mistakes and more costly mistakes that the copycats, the second mover, can imitate and copy. So be careful when it comes to claiming your uniqueness. Be humble and see to what extent. Maybe it's smart to be second. Maybe it's smart to imitate others. This is the key challenge. How to work with that? Well, you need to start within yourself. You need to continue and sophisticate this process. You are what you think. We have a goldfish here, and metaphorically he has the, you see, the fin of a shark. So that's a symbolic for you are what you think. So if you at one hand in this humbling process sort of diminish, no, I cannot do this, no, my idea is not worth it, that is the wrong kind of humbling. You should not do that kind of humbling. You should do the right form of humbling and sobering up. So you will insist on your uniqueness. This is good, I am good, this idea is good, we are good. Simultaneously, you are humbling yourself by saying, well, most probably we are not that unique. So you go into a more productive phase of humbling. But then you continue this process of actually carving out. So really think if it's big or if it's... don't be too shy when it comes to your cognitive development. Really do enter the next level in that self-improvement, because you become what you think. And this is supported very strongly in entrepreneurship research. I have my background as an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship researcher. And there is a kind of Nobel Prize in entrepreneurship. It doesn't call the Nobel Prize, but we have our version. And in 2008 it went to a professor called Bengt Johannesson. And he expressed this insight as follows. The entrepreneur acts upon a map of an imagined reality in the creative phase. By so doing, it may become real. So by acting according to the map, the map can become reality. And expressed otherwise, you are what you think. So if you think yourself downwards, this is no good, this will not hold, this will, etc., well, you will end up there. The reality will become like that. Because you will communicate that. Your whole body, your whole essence will say that. Your mouth will produce that. Your brain will say that to yourself. That's how it works. We are what we think. So you need to do it differently. The next phase, the key challenge in the innovative phase, here is you need to prove to the world. It's one thing to win your first crowd, to at all gain attraction, to have great ideas, and to have processes in motion. Then it's up to proof. You need to prove to the world that it's feasible, that it's doable, that there is realism into it. And the first way you do that is innovation. If we take the most obvious example, product innovation, you bring up a prototype. If it's technological innovation, it can be a dummy or as-if version that is not real, but you can use simulation and other techniques to sort of produce a prototype alike. But you need in some way or the other, when you enter the second phase, to prove your idea in one material form. This is the in-between stage between the creative phase and the empirical phase. You go from idea to producing one of something, a prototype, before you massify it. And this has its own logic, and it's here metaphorically symbolized by most ideas doesn't pass. This image is from a palace in Istanbul, where literally nothing was allowed. You see here, everything is forbidden. Cycling, walking, breathing, dancing, you name it. Everything is forbidden. So take that as the metaphor, as no. Most ideas does not pass. They don't hold. So this is quite a test to pass, just to prove that well, it's not only a good idea, but it works at least in one prototype version. This is challenging enough, but still another challenge is by far the toughest one. And we call that the decision-making process. Because there is a subtle distinction. Once you enter the innovation process, you must have this core lesson with you. It's in the second column there. It's the difference between opportunity and innovation. And between these two concepts, there are decisions to take. And these decisions are very difficult. Let's take the theory first. A business opportunity is a gap in the market that creates a chance to do something different. Note, it's a chance to do something different. If you're great innovators, you can come up with, we can do 10 things. Let's say you have a paper, these 10 things we could do. But the difference between opportunity, that's that column, an opportunity, these are our opportunities. We can do these 10 things. But then the innovation is what you actually choose to do. One thing is a chance to do something, the other thing is what you actually will do. And then it boils down maybe from a list of 10 different opportunities, but we only go for 2. Opportunities, for instance, can be, let's say you have an e-innovation. It's in e-marketing or e-commerce or whatever. Doing business over the internet. Then you have a classical choice. Do you target the world immediately, one click away, or do you do it old school? Do you target your whole market? Your opportunities there are conquer the world, conquer Ukraine, conquer Kharkiv, conquer my neighborhood, right? If we do a geographical segmentation. It's all there in the left part, it's an opportunity list. But in the innovation part, you have to take this decision. You need to make up your mind, because there a lot of constraints come. You have people constraints, you don't really have enough people. You have time constraints, you don't have enough time. You have money constraints, you don't have enough money. And so on and so forth. So to keep this in mind when it comes to innovation, you need to, at one hand, be very creative and constantly scan opportunities so that you always see the world in opportunities. But then, what to go for? That is the really, really difficult decision. If we take one very recent example, Microsoft just bought Nokia last week, I think. If we go back 10 years, Nokia was the darling of the world. They did everything right. Absolutely everything. And now 10 years later, with a new CEO, I will not name him, but his record in history will not go down to history as something positive. One core part of what went wrong is exactly this decision-making process. Here are the opportunities. Should we ally with Samsung? Should we go for smartphones? Should we diversify? Should we this? Okay, all the opportunities in the left column, in this column. And then in the right column, the decisions. Of all this possible, what do we actually go for? And they choose the wrong horse. They went for the wrong things. And they went from global leading position into more or less filing for bankruptcy before Microsoft stepped in and bought them. So this counts on all levels. I took a big multi-global example just to illustrate it, but it counts for you, down to the individual. As a first entrepreneur, as a beginner, of course, the stakes are lower and the marginal for mistakes is bigger. You can do a lot of mistakes. You don't need to be that afraid or skeptical to enter the process and try. Because you will not invest more money than you have, and you will not invest more time than you sort of can afford. So if things, sorry for language, fuck up, you still will survive, right? You will live, and life will go on. So there is no reason to be afraid. But the principles are the same. You must be aware of this process, and you need to respect it. So that's the key challenge in the innovation process. The last phase, I don't know my time. Is it out? It's out. Okay, let me finish. The entrepreneurial phase, the massifying phase. Well, if you've proven that your innovation works, how to win any market. And note that previously I said how to win any crowd. In the innovation phase and in the creative phase, it's about winning your first audience, your first true believers, the people that will team up with you, maybe some investors, your mother and father, your grandmother. It's about winning your first crowd just to gain the confidence, yeah, let's move on, right? But still, you have no client, you have no customer, you have no market. So this is the next step. Have you won a crowd? Well, that makes you going. Now you need to win any kind of market, and to start with, you must win your first client. A paying customer that pays for the stuff that you want to do. How to do that? Well, one can go a little bit, we can call it anarchistic. You don't think so much, you just give it a shot and you hope for a one-hit wonder. You know the concept of one-hit wonder? In the musical scene, bands that make one great hit, but you never hear from them afterwards. They do one pop song, 3.5 minutes, they are really the star of the world for 2 months, but then they don't do anything more. They disappear. And we have several of such examples in the world. We can transfer that into the corporate entrepreneurial world. There are many one-hit wonders. They get up and running, they get going, they start ventures, they start to sell things. 2 years later, they disappear. Somewhere between 7 and 9 out of 10 new ventures disappear within 2 years. Only between 15 and 30% survives over a long time. So there are many fast shooting stars and many fading ones. So it's difficult enough just to enter the market and become a one-hit wonder, but that is not the biggest challenge. Which is what? It is to stay entrepreneurial over time. We call it the art of bricoleuring. The bricoleur is a French concept, the master of jack of all trades. To be able to combine and fix, we can call him the fixer or she. In the old world it was the person that sort of has 10 professions or non-profession. I had, still have in my apartment in Mexico City, one guy, he has a center, he runs a newspaper stand, but he also runs the local parking scene. He parks cars for the inhabitants. He's doing plumbing, he's doing repairment of water, and so on and so forth. He's the master of all trades, the bricoleur, the guy that can combine and fix and deal with many things at the same time. Transfer that to a more sophisticated context. The principle is that. Transfer it to, for instance, the concept of innovation. Then, if I would have more time, I would describe it, but just let me now say that there are at least 10 or so forms of innovation. Technological innovation is only one. It's a very important one, but not the only one. The trick here for you is, my challenge to you is, well, of course you must rely upon your technological innovation. That's the foundation of your stuff. But don't stay there, because it will not make it. In 9 or 10 cases, that will not make you to the scene if you want to take it to the market. What you need to be good at is to start with, learn about these different forms of innovation. And then the trick is this one. To combine different types of innovation. For instance, you have a new product developed by a newly designed organizational unit that to some extent uses new methods for new marketing and distribution. That will be process innovation, that will be organizational innovation, it will be product innovation, and it will be technological innovation. This is how you can design your bundle of innovations. And that is the really key challenge to nowadays make it with any kind of, in particular, technological innovation. Because once again, as you have both as your core advantage, also paradoxically is your disadvantage. Being the meta industry, the IT industry that affects all other industries, well, more than we have seen that, right? There are many IT students and there are many great IT-related ideas. So to just have a really great technological innovation is the start of things, but you must in some way differentiate by combining different types of innovation in order to differentiate them. That talent can be trained in courses, in education, but it can also be practiced. You can learn it by doing it. Preferably you do it both. I at least see the best effect when, for instance, in the master in Mexico that I've been doing for many years, you have 2 years in course form to really refine your venture and to refine the knowledge about entrepreneurship. But they also go on with their shop ventures, learning by doing. They do it while they are attending their master. So this type of combined thing is the ideal situation. Because this is among the most difficult things to learn, but also among the most important things. I think my time thereby is up by far. Thank you very much.
Ребят, есть возможность задать пару вопросов, если кто хочет, без переводчика. Да. Please, question.
Hello, hi.
Hello.
You said that we need to cover all 3 types of skills. Creative, innovations, and entrepreneurs. I don't see entrepreneurs in my friends or something. Where can I find them?
You can team up virtually. So if you don't find them physically in your immediate close surroundings, your friends, your colleagues, engage in a lot of IT-related virtual, social media, etc. Some of the most creative teams that I know, they sit in different places of the world. They don't even need to meet. It's good if they meet, but you can find your people, your team, equally good virtually as you can find them in the physical world.
Еще вопросы есть? Давай.
you tell us, please, how to find your first investor for your project?
Wow.
Yes, this is
To start with, it's one of the things we are dealing with in the Tempus project. It should be a part of any progressive and good university that deals with innovation and entrepreneurship. They should have it within their infrastructure, or they should have the ambition to have it. So that's the first exposure. When you take your bachelor and your master, the university that you are in or that you're connected to, they should have a good structure for that, or should have the ambition of building it up. So logically, that's your first exposure. Second, depend on the country. I don't know Ukraine that good, but depend on the country. If the university doesn't satisfy your need, if you don't get the exposure you need, there are many investors and business angels and seed capitalists and all forms. They have their associations, and they organize, and in some countries they have the particular streets. Like if you go to Silicon Valley, you have in Palo Alto it's a particular street. You can literally take your portfolio and start walking, right? Maybe not everywhere it's that physically concentrated, but at least they are organized in most countries in one way or the other. So then you do your homework via Googling, and you find the associations. And there comes the first skill, this communicative skills. Hello, my name is Sergey, I have a great idea, give me half an hour of your time. And you will have some no's, but you will have at least one yes. Let me show you. So if the university doesn't do it on your own and find this skill, because they are, you will be surprised, there are actually more capital than there are ideas. So they are, if not desperately, but very often really in search for proactive young IT entrepreneurs. It's about the matchmaking that is the problem. And very often students think it's a too big thing, right? Why should I do that? And don't think like that. Immediately seek them up and just tell them who you are and what you would like to talk about. And go from there. You will have several no's, but one yes could be enough. So do both. There are more ways, but we have limited time here. But these are the two first ways I would go about if I would be 20 years old and have a great idea.
Thank you, Hans.
Thank you. I have another question.
Last question.
Okay. How can I prove that my project can survive in this world?
By realizing it. There are no guarantees, and in that sense, no proof. That's one of the both charms with entrepreneurship and one of the risks. There is no book that says right, wrong, right? No professor that checks you and gives you pass or fail. You can only prove it over time by trying to make it succeed. You can make forecasts and you can make estimations. You can try to convince investors yourself, banks, people that this will hold. But to search for that absolute answer that I can guarantee that this will, nobody can do that. It lies within the process. So, and good that you raise it, because those that are very short, very cocky, that says, this is the solution to the world problem and I will make it, be very careful for these guys. Those are dangerous.
Thank you.
Thank you. И еще, ребят, давайте вы, если сегодня до конца послушаете, здесь будут выступать, и вам будут все рассказывать, как в Украине можно найти инвестора, где это искать, кем и так далее. Thank you for presentation. Давайте проводим. Мы продолжаем. И не менее интересный доклад, ребят, кто знает украинские, а тем более харьковские стартапы, которые уже созрели и вышли на стадию финансирования и финансируются? Поднимите руку. Вас немного. Поэтому я с удовольствием приглашаю Евгения Шпигу. Он совсем недавно был такой же